Are you dreaming of the lifestyle that comes with successful trading? Well, it's time to make it a reality. Welcome to the Trading Ascension podcast, where you can discover methods to improve your trading results by focusing on your trading psychology. I'm Jason E., your guide on this path to trading improvement, self-discovery, and self-mastery. Together, we'll explore the personal and spiritual growth journey of profitable day trading. Prepare to unlock the secrets of the trader's mind and align your inner self with your personal success. Listen to this episode if you want to ascend to new levels of trading excellence and personal development. This is Trading Ascension, supporting your journey to mastering trading psychology and personal growth for consistent profits. Let's elevate your trading and your consciousness starting now. What's up, traders and aspiring traders? Thank you for showing up to this episode with the goal of improving. We're going to do that today. So respect to you. In today's episode, I want to dive deeper into the plague of ambiguity in our day trading system. I have 6 areas we can explore. The idea is that over time, experienced traders have considered these areas. And you could possibly collapse time frames today toward improving by receiving this information in a bite-sized chunk where you are right now on your journey. So I'm going to share research in these areas and, areas that I've discovered. And it's up to you after getting this information to do the thought exercise and find ways to knock out the ambiguity in these areas. So let's build the foundation of today's takeaway. And it all aligns with the foundation of this community, right? We want to overcome what I've identified through interviews and personal experience as major hurdles for traders, hurdles that cause the astronomical numbers of failure, and they cause frustration, and ambiguity causes defeat. So the order doesn't matter, but the first thing I want to mention is being lost, not knowing exactly what actions to add or subtract in the upcoming week from your trading system. In this stage, you're less than 99% sure that adding or removing something will improve your results. Now, we can never be 100% sure, right? But we can have data proven or data driven proof that helps us become more confident that, yeah, I could probably stop doing this action or start doing this action. It's going to help. Now, a large majority of traders are lost right now. And being lost is something that all traders experience, right? So there's no shame in that, especially as they ascend from one level to the next level, because the major thing between us as traders right now and better results and getting those results is based on what we don't know, right? That's how we overcome undesirable results. We get new information. We take new actions. But that's not all of it, because we could face the next of the 3 foes once we aren't lost, and that's being stuck. And stuck is when you have clarity. You see an issue, right? It pops out from the data, but you don't know how to implement the correction. A correction that must be installed not just in your actions, but also in your mindset. Because real change requires both, right? Of course. And then there's alone. The loneliness of trying to walk this path of personal and spiritual growth for profitable day trading without mentorship or just feedback on your process and your progress. Now, the entire duration of a trading career, you may not need this. But there are times where it's a must. It's a must to get feedback. It's a must to have a mentor. It's a must to have a trading partner. It's nearly impossible to clearly see things that are only in your mind. because our thoughts and our ideas live behind the filters through which we view the world. And this is why data tracking and journaling are so key. We can actually step back and look visually at our performance. And this helps us shift from that, I'm thinking, NBA playoffs, that on the court player perspective to the coaching box seat, giving us clarity that we need. Right. So that's the first step, even before you move towards trading partner or mentorship or into a mastermind group like the one that, we're getting ready to open here. In the end, we have to play both worker and manager of our trading progress. So ultimately, to simplify the conversation, I talk about these three areas combined using the term ambiguity. When we talk about ambiguity in this community, we're talking about blind spots that need to be filled with mindful plans and supporting mindsets that support new actions that yield different results from the former. The merger of action and thought and even belief is why I identify this show as the community focused on the personal and spiritual growth path of profitable trading, right? Because it's a holistic change, and that's something we all seek. So the trading ambiguity, these blind spots, they can show up all over the process of day trading. But the reason they're so detrimental and worth our time and focus and worth the conversation is because no one was born a trader, right? That's what Randy Howe, the trading coach, always says, trading psychologist. I don't know if he goes by psychologist, but most of you are like me. We're just regular people trying to reach our goals. And again, quoting Randy, he said, we bring the wrong brain into trading. Not the wrong brain, just the wrong brain for trading. So just the hint of ambiguity allows habits and beliefs from our old self to go unchecked in this new world of day trading. And they show up in our trading actions and they hinder our success. Now, that doesn't mean that these habits and actions are wrong. Again, they're just not, they don't serve our trading. So we can't condemn ourselves. They just don't serve the new purpose of reaching the trading results we seek, right? So ultimately, big picture, the goal is top to bottom, we have to think, feel, and take actions like a successful day trader. We have to think, feel, and act in a way that is aligned with the version of ourselves that is a successful day trader. Now, one cool factor about this is that we don't have to seek to be anything else but the best version of ourselves, right? Once we have that profitable system. Now, I don't think anyone can push back on that. No one can legitimately argue the opposite. And these rules actually apply to any endeavor on earth. You have to be the best version of yourself, performing like the person you want to get the results of, because all results have an action and a thought pattern behind them. Now, quick side note, because I ran into some silly conversation again. The assumption is that you have a strategy, right? And I won't even say it's assumption because we talk about it often. And this strategy you have to receive from a successful program or a successful person, or you can build one yourself. Any of those, the success generator system where feedback, deliberate action, and behavioral change are applied, they polish that strategy. The discussion of, you need a strategy before you get psychology, it's assumed here, right? But, there's numerous shows, numerous guests that help me hammer this point in, especially in earlier seasons, right? So I think it goes without saying, but hey, maybe you're new here, so I'm saying it. And like, Jared Tenner's told me, trading mindset coach, is that if you don't have a trading, system that you can deploy with consistency, you don't need to worry about trading psychology, right? So what are you applying, psychology? And I think I've put it like this before. Psychology is the science towards something, right? So there's behavioral science, there's employment psychology, there's all types of psychology, right? It's a science that's applied to different endeavors. So if you don't have a trading system, you don't have anything to apply the psychology of trading to. You can't deploy it to anything, right? And even if you have a system and you are struggling with discipline, we can apply trading psychology to why you aren't deploying that system that way. But you have to have that foundation, right? You have to have something to apply the science to. If someone was, a big one is workplace psychology. But if someone doesn't have a job, it's just not going to work for them, right? So anyway, that's a tangent. Even if you build it from scratch, right? If you're the chef of your trading system, you're going to need to eventually have a system to apply this information to. And some people like building from scratch. And I want to, I'll pin that point because I want to come back to certain paths being for certain people. So today I want to highlight what to do for specific actions in certain areas. It's impossible to be consistent and to do the right thing if it isn't written down outside of your own mind, right? It's impossible to hold yourself to a standard of doing it completely if it's not a standard set. So an example would be a trader with a loose entry criteria. They'll talk themselves into taking any trade. Just like a person with no morals can talk themselves into any, horrific actions. We need guidelines as humans if we want to get desired results, right? In those areas that we're focused on. People that live by a code in certain areas of their life get the results that they want in those areas of life. They're more consistent people because they embody these codes. A person that says, I am healthy, that healthy person makes decisions and they live by a code which justifies them doing the right thing and not the wrong thing, right? A person faking healthy, they would say, I worked out this week, so I'm going to party and drink and do all these bad habits, right? A person who has this code of healthy, they're going to say, I had this great week of being healthy. I'm not going to ruin that today because it's not in my code, right? Not going to do the opposite just because it's the weekend. So my point being, right, is that we need trading morality for our system. We can become more of the trader we want to be deep within when we eliminate ambiguity in these 6 areas. And these areas could potentially be blind spots for you. But today, again, we're going to shorten your learning curve. I'm excited to serve you and potentially bring light to ambiguity in your process. If you feel like defeat is lurking, maybe you faced an issue and you haven't dissolved it yet. So the threat of it happening again is kind of looming and it's going to eat at your confidence. Subconsciously, you're going to know, hey, this could happen at any time. Things could go off the rails at any time. If you feel like that, this episode is for you. I'm going to point out a few small gaps where you can add mindfulness, and however how they seem small, but when you give ambiguity an inch, it's going to take a mile. In our reality, there are no vacuums. That's what they tell us. No vacuums in the universe. So these small areas, if they aren't filled with intention and mindfulness, the habits of the non-trader, right? The destructive habits, the previous habits or the old bad habits are going to fill that space. So you have to add a mindset and action steps that are deliberate so you don't hinder your growth and results by having that small area of ambiguity. So, big picture, there may be gaps between actions that can be filled with deliberate thinking, right? So some of the ambiguity are the in-between steps that we'll talk about today. So before we dive into like these micro gaps, I want to share something that might be insightful. I want you to consider and just think about this week. What draws you to trading is often the very thing that can hold you back from growing as a trader. There is a circle and a list of things that you have to be proficient at to have success in this endeavor. And when you have a reason that you got into this, your drive for self-fulfillment will always win out in the end. What draws you to trading is often the very thing that can hold you back from growing as a trader. So let me give you an example. If you're a thrill seeker, the excitement of trading may motivate you, but it can also become a hurdle. You may gravitate towards, a fast-paced strategy, right? But not have that, right? So you may have the wrong strategy and you're like, man, I'm fighting myself. I'm bored. And you're thinking you got to tackle this boredom, but you may be so deeply ingrained in, that thrill seeking. It's part of you that fighting against it may be the wrong path. You may need to take many trades a day, small gains like scalping. And maybe as you grow in your career, the thrill that you seek fades, right? Because trading eventually it gets boring, especially as you improve. How do you stay motivated then? When trading requires patience, like sitting on your hands and waiting for the right setup, but you need excitement, it can make things difficult. So if your core reason for trading clashes with what's required for success, your underlying need will usually win out and it will show up like sabotage. And this is why it's so important to choose strategies that align with your personality, right? This is what I was kind of mentioning earlier. If you're building it from scratch, if that's your mindset, hey, you're on the right path. Whether you're, drawn to scalping, swing trading, long-term positions, your natural tendencies should guide your approach, right? Not fight against it. So I just want you to consider this week, maybe the areas that you need to improve may need to be places where you change things. Now, I'm not a proponent of changing. I think you should hammer the same nail, but there are areas where you have to contemplate, man, I'm hammering the wrong nail, right? And then on the opposite side, maybe you're more reserved and contemplative, right? You might be attracted to trading as an intellectual pursuit, analyzing data and making moves that play out over weeks and months. And for that person, a rapid fire trading system could feel overwhelming and counterproductive. So, the takeaway here is ask yourself, what was your first motivation to trade? Besides the money. Did you envision it? How did you envision it? Right? Was it fast paced and reactive? Was it slow and methodical? Understanding this can help you filter out not only the actions you take, but it can filter out advice and strategies that don't fit your style, saving you time and frustration by watching the wrong videos or listening to the wrong podcast. Remember, not every trader needs the same information or approach. Here, I try to make this so all-encompassing that no matter what your system is, your approach, this information applies to you, but it doesn't apply to everybody. So you got to think as information in podcasts and videos get more granular, they definitely don't apply to everybody. Right? For instance, some believe, I heard a trader on a podcast say the other day that staying on top of the daily news is foundational for traders. But that's not true. Because traders like Al Brooks, right, who enter the market multiple times in a single minute, news would be irrelevant, right? They're reacting to market setups. I interviewed a dark pool trader, right, who transitioned from Wall Street to retail trading. She doesn't care about, popular strategies or market predictions. Her success comes from understanding hidden market entities and entries. So, knowing your motivation and information preferences can help you avoid unnecessary battles and focus on what truly matters for your growth. Right? So I just wanted to say that, but let's get into it. Here are 6 questions for you to consider. 6 areas where ambiguity might be plaguing you. And I can promise you, whether through mindfulness or just experience, successful traders have considered these. The traders that I've interviewed that are getting phenomenal results, they've considered these. All traders who have success have these areas dialed in. Now, that doesn't mean they did as new traders, but over time they stumbled into it, right? They unconsciously just kind of did it. And they removed ambiguity in these areas. It's interesting because, we dive deep in this and we think on it. We get nerdy on this stuff, but I've talked to traders. They're doing things that are success supporting, and they don't know why, right? It just over time, they're like, hey, this is a natural next step, right? They didn't have to put a lot of mindfulness in it. We get real heady over here with what we're thinking about, but the point is that the end result, it has to be reached. So by bringing these areas to your attention today, hopefully you can add some clarity to it. So number one, what is your pre-trading routine to ensure you're in a peak state? What is your pre-trading routine to ensure you're in a peak state? Let's say I'm interviewing you, right? You're on this show with me and I ask you that question. Do you have an answer that's legit? Would you stumble through that answer? Not having clarity here as a, novice trader can leave you vulnerable to trading in a state that isn't optimal for making the best decision, a decision that's in your own best interest. You might see like veteran traders online and maybe they do the routine before the camera's on, or maybe their process is so solid it seems seamless. But trust me, they started somewhere, and so will you. Don't let ambiguity in your pre-market routine hinder your success. And it falls into that category of, hey, it doesn't have to be a certain thing, but it has to be something. You have to have a way to get yourself personally what works for you, not what works for somebody else, right? Although you can build off others, what works for you to get yourself in a peak state before you're trading. What gets you focused, what gets you aligned, what gets you ready for action, get you locked in. What is your pre-trading routine to ensure you're in a peak state? Number two, what is your exact process for capturing data? If you don't have an answer, you're doing yourself a disservice. A successful trader might say anything, but for example, I journal before trading. I journal after every 3 trades. And then when the day's over, I review my trades. I send my CVS to my online trading journal at the end of each session, or I write down my thoughts after every trade, right? It doesn't have to be a certain way. It's about what works for you, but it does have to be something. Ambiguity here can leave you missing key data that could help you identify issues or spot advantages in your trading system. And if you don't have a clear answer here, you're likely not getting long-term results that you seek. But don't get down on yourself, just work on it. Right? So that question is, what is your exact process for capturing data? Number 3, after a loss, what do you say to yourself and what actions do you take before the next trade? After a loss, what do you say to yourself? And what actions do you take before the next trade? Ambiguity here leaves you vulnerable to emotional revenge trading, negative self-talk. It can delay you from getting back on track. The non-action you take is often the exact action you need to be successful. So how will you, acknowledge that? And that leads me to the next area, right? How do you celebrate or acknowledge non-action wins? How do you celebrate or acknowledge non-action wins? Now, this is something more geared towards novice traders. And this means when you pass on a trade that isn't ideal, how do you mindfully acknowledge that successful trade behavior? They always talk about patience, sitting on your hands. And if you're not acknowledging that, if you're not pointing that out as a non-action of success, you're not locking in that behavior. right? And when locking in that behavior, you're going to defeat and eat at FOMO, eat at impatience. You need to ground that habit just as much as you need to be great at taking action. How can your mind, your subconscious, and your body know that that is an act of success if you don't acknowledge it? By adding clarity here, you remove ambiguity and you work both sides of what it takes to succeed at trading, taking action when needed and avoiding unnecessary actions. So how do you celebrate or acknowledge non-action wins? Right? When you're tempted and you don't fall for it, right? When that situation shows up and you made a mistake last week, but you didn't this week, what do you do, right? How do you acknowledge that? How do you lock in that non-action behavior of success? This is, I think, number 5. What affirmations tie you to the successful version of yourself? And this can be affirmation or affirmations. Even if a trader doesn't think about this consciously, right? They didn't sit down and create it like you may do after this show. When you dig into a conversation with them, which I have for years now, their mentality, it comes out, right? Especially when you know what questions to ask, right? When you're seeking that information like I am in these conversations, you hear things like, yeah, I know I can do this. I just need to be patient. Or as long as I follow my strategy, I make money, right? They have some belief that plays out over and over in their minds and it guides their actions. Do you? Or do you have ambiguity here? Are you just a boat on the ocean with no sails? Not consistently or consciously creating your experience, just floating with hope. Number 6, what visual cues do you see when trading that supports success? What visual cues do you see when trading that supports success? Unconsciously, our minds take in everything around us, and all of it weighs in on our mindset, right? When I was having a conversation with Greg Papasol, a former bank trader, now successful retail trader, runs an incredible community. He once told me about, the example of trading with a picture of a mom on the desk, right? And there's moms, right? Love you, mom's going to trade with you right here. But her image brought up thoughts that, mom always said people with money are evil. So those limiting beliefs were reminded by having her there, and that affected the trading of the trader he was speaking about. Now, although this show is, all audible, I do these pre-show meet and greets when I have guests. And I look at the walls and the backgrounds of these traders, right? Always make a note of it. And some have images of money, peaceful scenes, oceans, calm, serenity things. Or they have pictures like, Ali, right? And his famous punch to motivate him. Others might have Kobe Bryant shooting a game-winning shot or Jordan doing a fist pump. Look around your trading space. What story do the visuals tell? Do you have just piles of bills on the desk? Do you have disempowering pictures? Look at the pictures and it says, how do you make me feel? If I was, and then you state your goal, this person having this goal, is this picture what I would have? Sometimes our environment locks us into old versions of ourselves, but we want to create an environment of success that is visual. It matters. So let me just go back through these 6. Number 1, what is your pre-trading routine to ensure you're in a peak state? What is your exact process for capturing data? After a loss, what do you say to yourself and what actions do you take before the next trade? How do you celebrate or acknowledge non-action wins? What affirmation or affirmations tie you to the successful version of yourself? What visual cues do you see when you're trading? And I want to go back to number 5. What affirmations tie you to the successful version of yourself? It's one of the bigger ones on this list, I believe, because we have to have not only the push motivation, but the pull motivation, right? So there's 2 types of motivation, just in general. And it's the push, right? Things that are undesired now. And we're like, hey, I don't want this. I'm trying to escape this. I'm trying to overcome this. So I'm motivated to take action. And then there's the pull motivation, right? I have this vision of the future. I have this clarity of things being different from how they are now, better than they are now. And I'm going to strive towards that. And there, depending on who you are, you have to have a balance for most of us, but sometimes we lean one way or another. But having this vision, something that ties you to the version of yourself that's taking actions that support your success, is very crucial. You have to have some affirming statement, right? Some I am, insert your goal, and the actions it takes to get to that goal, right? You have to have that kind of thought pattern somewhere in your mindset. If not, you may think you're taking actions towards a goal, but you're not, because you don't have that goal. You have to align yourself as a human, right? They talk about alignment, and alignment is when you believe, you're taking action, and you're thinking in a certain way. So that trinity, if you will, supports, I won't say rapid, but more expedited, the more expedited path towards your goal. So I want you to consider these 6 areas. I appreciate you tuning in. Here's to being the hero of your story, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Trading Ascension Podcast. I hope you're gaining valuable insights to support your day trading journey. If you found value today, I'd appreciate it if you could follow me on Instagram, Real Trading Ascension, subscribe on YouTube, and give this episode a like. Your support helps me grow and bring you even better content. Be sure to visit tradingascension.com for free resources, exclusive tips, and tools designed to elevate your trading. I'm inviting you back. Join me in the next episode as we continue to ascend together. Until then, keep ascending, stay mindful, and remember, your journey to mastering trading psychology and consistent profits starts with your commitment to personal growth. Yeah.